Hi, I'm Tom here from Phone Data Services, and today we're going to review the Rapidstrike switch kit available from Blastersmiths UK. Now I've taken my main trigger out and you can see it's installed in my Rapidstrike, and I'm going to run you through what you get in the kit. You receive here this big flat 3D printed plate with the reinforcement pieces to hold the triggers and to allow alignment of the micro switches, and you receive 3 of these high ampage micro switches here. And you also receive this, which is a little peg-shaped interrupter type gear that interfaces with the standard pusher motor to enable you to run the electrical braking on the pusher motor, thereby allowing control over the dart cycling process. Now you can see that there are a few small pieces of plastic card packing around the assemblies here, and I've used those because this is a very early production prototype, and mine didn't interface as well as it could have done, and I felt that I could improve on that, so I've done a little tweaking to the design. And I've had a chat with the guys at BSUK. The other problem that I encountered was this peg here, actually broke off while I was installing this, and they assure me that they've looked into the detail of that, and the full production versions will have a little bit of reinforcement in this area, and should fit a little bit better around this tooth, but it's not a real big deal to do. This is aimed at advanced modders anyway, and if you're even contemplating rewiring a Rapidstrike, especially if you're going to use high output motors like blades, or you're going to use sharks or any of the big juicy motors that need lots of current, then I would do this mod. You can of course modify your standard trigger cluster, and there's some very good write-ups on that around on the web, and Taruk has done one, and UK Nerf War has a very neat one that he's written up to on his blog on how to change the standard cluster to accept these micro switches. Now I'm just going to quickly run through the wiring of mine, because this is a major headache if you've not done it before. And if I pop the main trigger back in, you can see how the main trigger will fit in and interface with the rest of the kit. If I can catch the spring. So there we have the main trigger in place, and this is a fully operational Rapidstrike. All the batteries are all in it, so you'll be able to hear it work. So I'm going to start down here, and this is the flywheel micro switch, and on the flywheel micro switch we have 3 contacts. As on all micro switches, we have the normally closed, the normally open, and the common. And in common with all 3-pin switches, excuse the background noise, the builders are in next door and they keep hitting things. Now, in common with all micro switches, you've got 3 poles here, and I'm just going to run through how these were wired. For those of you who can't understand wiring diagrams, and I'm one of those people, there are lots of good posts about Rapidstrike wiring. I've got to give props to Rexr5 over on HVZ forums for getting one of the first working diagrams up, and also to SSGT, and also to True Fiction for some wiring diagram work in the UK, and to Boff and the boys obviously at BSUK who put up an early diagram as well. Quite a complicated beast to get it working right. You've got to have your wiring correct. Now this blaster is rewired with 16 AWG wire throughout, and it's been designed from the ground up to accept a variety of motor combinations because it's going to be my test platform. So on to the connections. Right, on this one, normally closed, blank, no connection. Normally open, this is the positive feed from the battery tray at the front, or from the power pack if you're using a pack. And then on the common, this is the return line that goes back up to the front of the blaster and connects to the positive on your pusher motors, on your flywheel motors. So this one goes to the positive on the flywheel motor. And then we move on to the main trigger group, and we have a couple of wires coming in here. And you'll notice the bottom we have the normally closed. This then goes, this black wire here goes back around, and it goes up here, and it goes onto the common of the pusher motor switch. Then we have the normally open, which not only has a feed in but also has a return feed out. So there's the feed in here that carries on from down here, which is your main feed from your battery positive terminal, and then there's an additional out which then goes all the way up and round, and it goes up onto here, onto the normally closed pusher motor micro switch. So these have got to be correct. Just take care to make sure. You can see that I've insulated as many of the connections as I possibly can, because you really don't want any shorts in this blaster. It will melt your battery tray or it'll damage your pack, and you're dealing with quite high currents in some cases. Some of those LiPo batteries are capable of a 20 amp discharge, so just beware. Now, don't work on the blaster with the power connected. That's a given in some ways, but people do it. Right, now we move on to the final connection on the main trigger group, and this is the positive feed here, which is in red, which goes to the pusher motor. If you're using a bigger motor, obviously your pusher case is going to look a little different to mine because you've got a 180 in there or something, but the wiring should be the same for all motors. Right, now we move on to this one, which is the pusher motor switch, and this controls the pusher, and it allows the pusher itself to retract each turn at the end of the firing cycle when you let go of the trigger. So if I just demonstrate that, there's the main trigger, and you can see the gear operating. If I just tweak the camera a little bit as we're focusing on this now. So here we go. Right, it'll do that up until about 8.4, 8.5 volts. Some people have reported 9 as possible, and beyond that then it overruns the electrical braking available to the motor. And there are ways to get around this. Turok suggests some diodes in this line here, and you can make them switchable. This blaster's set up for indoor use, so I'm not planning on going much beyond 7.2 volts because I'm at short ranges and I'm not caring about a huge rate of fire. What I do like about this setup is that it does allow you to do burst fire. You can do single shot really nicely, and you can hear I've got barricade motors in this, but you get a nice noise. This is just on standard alkaline batteries. There's no pack in there at the moment, although I've provided connectors to me for one should I wish to connect it. So you can see a really good single shot, excellent fire control, and what the other cool thing about this is that you can set up your trigger sensitivity. And if we go back to the trigger group, you can see here that I've put a little bit of packing on a lot of the triggers here and down here, in order to get my trigger feel exactly how I want it, which you can't do so easily with the stock one. So up to this last micro switch, the pusher one. So we've got at this end, we're going to have the common, which is goes back to the main trigger, and that goes to the normally closed. Now we have the normally open, which has the pusher motor connected to it, and it also has the only negative feed from the battery tray. Okay, so if you're wiring this, no negative feeds anywhere else back to the battery except this one here on the middle pin of this relay. If you put any more in, especially down here or any of the other two switches, you'll create a feedback loop which will give you a short. So that's the only connection that goes back to the battery. And then on the end, we've got the normally closed position switch, which is the blue one, which now goes right back here to the normally open. So that should be your wiring. And if you look carefully at the diagram, it's easier to understand if you can read those circuit diagrams by looking at the circuit diagram, but I've just done this for ease for those of you who get stuck. Feel free to drop me a PM, or if you're on BritNerf, and if you are not on BritNerf, then I'm on Google+, and there's lots of link ups on my YouTube site. So feel free to drop me a line if you're having trouble with yours, and the guys at BSUK are very welcome, are very happy to help. If you're not sure about doing this mod and you think that this might be a bit beyond you, then please don't do it yourself. There are ways and means. If you contact Boff through BritNerf, he is one of the guys that works at BSUK, and he's able to do these as private commissions, and you can also custom pick what motor combinations, battery combinations you want. So there are commissioned people who will do these. I don't at the moment. So in short, pros of this system: very well made, quite nice quality, fits really well, it's easy to fit. You mustn't forget to glue it in place. Here you can see some hot glue that I've used to hold it in place, and I've got some more glue here, and I've got some down the bottom here. And the idea about that is that if I want to remove it, which I'm going to do for painting, I can just melt that hot glue with my soldering iron, and then I can take it out with my old soldering iron, and then I can lift it all out to paint it. Or I can leave the switch in place and mask off a lot of the wiring in this area. So you've got customizable trigger feel, you've got a quick installation. This saves cutting, grinding, anything. You put it in and wire it up. What took me the time was getting my head around the wiring. The actual installation is really simple. This whole setup takes about an hour to wire up if you're careful. Probably quicker if you're used to doing it. If you've done a Rapidstrike build before, I'd suggest you'd probably manage this in about half an hour. You've obviously got this excellent trigger feel where you can get those nice single shots going. You've got real reliability and the ability to set your trigger throw, and you can see there's not much movement there to activate the flywheel. And so far this has been tested. It's had about 2 or 3 hours playtime put through it, and my kids have had it, they've shot it. It should be good for plenty of cycles, especially if you fix the plate down securely. The thing to look out for on this plate obviously is flexing in this area, because this assembly up the top here, up this end, let's just lift that up so we can see it, up here, this assembly here does move with the pusher. So if this isn't correctly fixed down, and BSUK have got a very nice set of instructions up, if you don't correctly fix this down, then you will have problems, and you could possibly break this end piece off here or damage that. So it's well worth being aware of the instructions and reading them carefully before you start. And the BSUK guys are, like I say, happy to take any questions you may have. And this kit retails at £12, that's 12 GBP, so Great Britain pounds, and they do ship worldwide. And currently, as far as I'm aware, they're the only people offering this switch upgrade as an off-the-peg item, and it's usually in stock, so it's a quick item to get hold of. And if you're contemplating building a Rapidstrike and you don't want to modify your standard trigger cluster, then I heartily recommend this item.